Harriet Tubman was an enslaved domestic worker who escaped slavery and led hundreds of enslaved African Americans to freedom along the Underground Railroad. She was also the first woman to lead a major military operation in the United States, freeing over 700 slaves during the Civil War. Dorothy Bolden was a domestic worker and a civil rights leader. In 1968, she founded the National Domestic Workers Union of America, organizing over 10,000 domestic workers in Atlanta to improve wages and working conditions. Bolden led the organization for 28 years, despite constant harassment from white employers. Carolyn Reed was a household worker for over 20 years in New York City. She helped create the Household Technicians of America in 1971, the first national organization of domestic workers, and later became executive director of the National Committee on Household Employment. Josephine (Jo) Hewlett was a single mother and household worker who founded the Youngstown Household Technicians in Ohio. As an organizer, she helped build the first national organization, the Household Technicians of America, and recruited hundreds of workers to attend their national conventions every year in the early 1970s. Geraldine Miller organized household workers in New York City and helped to create the Household Technicians of America in 1971. Miller became an organizer so domestic workers like herself and her mother, Gertrude Davis Dunn, would receive the respect they deserved. Geraldine Roberts raised 3 children by herself while doing domestic work. Her civil rights activism inspired her to organize a domestic workers group in Cleveland in 1965. She also helped to create the Household Technicians of America in 1971. Juana Colon was the daughter of formerly enslaved parents in Camarillo, Puerto Rico, and worked as a laundress and steam ironer. She was famous for her speeches as a labor organizer and as a founder of the Socialist Party. Police shot and injured her for throwing rocks to defend striking cigar workers. Isabel de Olvera was born in Mexico to an African father and an indigenous mother in the late 1500s. She is known for a legal petition she made to the governor of Querétaro, Mexico, before traveling north as the servant of a Spanish woman to protect her status as a free woman. Between 1810 and 1811, indigenous women who were forced to work as servants on the San Juan Bautista mission in California took up arms and fled together to the nearby Ohlone community. They are a reminder of the many domestic worker ancestors whose names we may never know. Mary Upshaw McClendon was a single mother and a household worker who founded the Detroit Household Workers Organization in 1969. The group brought Black and Latina workers together to improve working conditions and connected workers' struggles to anti-imperialism. In the 1930s, 3 sisters who worked as washerwomen, maids, and cooks were interviewed through the Works Progress Administration. They described years of back-breaking labor and hunger in a racist world. But they pooled their earnings to buy a house together and took great pride in making crochet, baskets, and quilts. On January 28, 1917, Carmelita Torres refused to submit to U.S. immigration agents forcing Mexican domestic workers to strip bare and be doused with toxic chemicals before entering the U.S. Torres and 30 other domestic workers protested while thousands on both sides of the border cheered in support. Malintzin Tenepal was an indigenous Nahua woman, popularly called La Malinche. She was enslaved and given to the Spanish conquistador Hernán Cortés as a domestic servant. Malintzin was forced to assist her conquerors to preserve her life and became a valuable interpreter and negotiator for Cortés. Fedelina Lugasan was born in the Philippines and at 16 was hired by family as a domestic worker, but her employers never paid her and later trafficked her to California. In 2018, after 65 years of forced labor, she regained her freedom and spoke out against her employers. In 1881, Black washerwomen organized a 10-day strike in Atlanta to win higher wages. Black cooks, house servants, and nurses joined them. They called their union the Washing Society, and it grew from 20 people to 3,000 members in only 3 weeks. Chinese immigrant men founded the Chinese Hand Laundry Association in New York City in 1933. They successfully pressured the city government to lower licensing fees and exempt them from racist citizenship requirements. They also created their own newspaper, the Chinese Daily News. Geneva Evans was a home care worker and union leader in Boston in the 1980s and 1990s. As founder and president of the United Labor Union's Local 1475, she helped win the first contracts for Boston home care workers, winning wage increases, health insurance, and sick days. Georgia Teresa Gilmore was a household worker and a civil rights leader who enabled the success of the Montgomery bus boycott. Gilmore organized a crew of women to make and sell pies and meals, raising hundreds of dollars a week to bail protesters from jail, fund the carpool system, and more. Dr. Melnea A. Cass was a household worker and civil rights leader. She received honorary doctorates from 3 universities for her social justice work. She led the Women's Service Club of Boston, which won collective bargaining and workers' compensation for Massachusetts domestic workers in 1970. Evelyn Coke was a home health aide. In 2002, she organized with the Service Employees International Union to win overtime pay for all home care workers, bringing a lawsuit all the way to the Supreme Court. 4 years after her death in 2009, home care workers finally won overtime. Rosa Ramirez Guerrero began cleaning houses in El Paso, Texas when she was 10. The music clubs across the border in Juarez inspired Rosa to become a dance teacher and cultural activist. She founded the International Folklorico Dance Group, devoted to building cultural harmony in the borderlands.